And so when I come back to this verse, for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, maybe it's because God has a big investment. Okay? God has a project going on called saving mankind from his self-destructive behavior. And he's invested a lot into that. He's invested everything in this project. And this project, I want to talk about this project. God is on a time schedule for saving mankind from their self-destructive behavior. In other words, I know this is going to be hard for you to understand, but God's not trying to save everybody right now from their self-destructive behavior. There are many people who will live and die, and they will never be saved from their self-destructive behavior. Prisons are full of people like this. I had an uncle, Uncle Ralph, who smoked himself to death. He died of emphysema and lung cancer. He could barely, he basically choked to death. I remember visiting him in the hospital during his last days, and it was not a pretty sight. But he died from his self-destructive behavior. And, if you've ever known someone who committed suicide, they weren't saved from their self-destructive behavior. Many of the Hollywood stars that you read about, drug overdose, they died from their self-destructive behavior. Now, I didn't say you couldn't preach them into heaven and all that stuff, and by the way, you've never been to a funeral where some poor sap got preached into hell. You never have, and you never will. They all managed to squeak through the pearly gates somehow. But my point is, people that die in their self-destructive behaviors have never been saved. You understand what I'm saying? They've never really been saved, because salvation is about life. When I hear people committing suicide, I realize they were never saved from their self-destructive behavior. Salvation is about life. It's the very opposite of taking your life, okay? So there's many people, there are people who claim to be saved, and they are living in a self-destructive behavior, lifestyle. Some people call it sin. But you see, claiming to be saved and living in a self-destructive behavior is an oxymoron. It's two opposites. You can't have it. It doesn't work. So when we ask this question, is there really a God that loves me? We got to understand this. God's not saving everybody right now from their self-destructive behavior. That should be obvious. It should be obvious to anybody with a couple of brain cells in their head who just thinks for a moment and looks at the world around them and realizes, no, God's not saving everybody from their self-destructive behavior. I could just as easily say, God's not saving everyone right now. God is on a time schedule for saving mankind from those self-destructive behaviors. If you are to ever grasp and understand the love that God has for mankind, you must understand this one point. Today is not the only day of salvation. Let me repeat that. If you are to ever grasp and understand the love that God has for humanity, you must understand this one point. Today is not the only day of salvation.
Is that really in the Bible? What you think is in the Bible is not.